Live coverage of Pope Francis in Cuba. He is in Santiago making his way to the airport. He'll be departing Cuba in just moments, and then he heads right here to the United States. You're looking at footage of people lining the roadways. Of course, now they've reached the end of the people lining the roadways. But we had been watching it for some time. Packed streets, people standing on their front porches and waving flags, and they were really packed in to see him and say goodbye to this Pope who obviously has captured their hearts in powerful ways. Father Jerry Murray.
Lots of enthusiasm. It's great to see so many people out there, and between the speeches, the gestures, the prayerfulness, the beauty of celebrating the Mass in the different places, this has left a tremendous impact on Cuba and I think on the rest of Latin America, which is watching. The Pope is a Latin American. He knows how to speak from the heart in the language of Cuban people. He's an experienced man. He's sort of an abuelo, a grandfatherly type Pope, and he really appeals in so many ways to the Cuban heart, which is Catholic at heart, besieged but hopeful.
Father Roberto?
Yeah, I completely agree with Father. We were privileged this morning to hear that beautiful homily at the Shrine of Our Lady in El Cobre, and then this intimate moment with Cuban families that also is a preview of, and it's standard fare. For example, when he said that expression that he used, do not let the attitude of yo, me, conmigo, y para mí, I, me, for me, myself, and with me. You know, that's a standard Francis. That's been with him. I mean, even before he was Pope, he always spoke, do not grow into this mentality of yo, me, conmigo, para mí. So these are recurrent themes. I think that what some people fail to understand, either because they don't want to understand or because they're not paying attention, is the fact that the Pope is Catholic. He was as a bishop. He exercised his episcopacy under John Paul II, from whom he learned a great deal. He has great admiration for Benedict XVI, and he was given his mission as successor of Peter in a church that has very clear pastoral guidelines that go all the way from the Council of Trent to the Second Vatican Council. And so what he's trying to do is engage in dialogue with the modern world, not because he's trying to proselytize, as some people would have us believe, that he wants to increase the numbers of the church. No, but simply because he has a mission, and that mission is to announce Christ to the world, because Christ died for all of us. Those of us here, people in Cuba, the President of the United States, the Supreme Court justices, the person in the Tibet that may never even heard his name. And that's precisely the mission that the Lord entrusted to Peter, to go out to all the corners of the world, to all peoples, to announce the good news of salvation in Christ. And that's what he's trying to do, using his own style, his own personality. Every Pope has their own personality, but it's the timeless message of the Church about redemption in Jesus Christ and about the infinite dignity of the human person created in the image and likeness of God. And the mercy of God, that doesn't mean anything goes. It means that we have to open our hearts to the transforming grace of God.
You're seeing the crowds there lining the path to tell the Pope goodbye as he nears the airport. And they are still waving their flags. And you see the minders on the left. Look at see the people with their backs turned to the road.
Yeah, the people, the government-paid people who are there to keep an eye on it.
They get a day's wages and snacks, apparently, for minding the crowd. And you notice they don't have flags. They're not turning. It gives you a real look at the difference between the people on the right and the enthusiasm and the minders on the left who were told, don't let anybody over here. The two Cubas really in a stark contrast there.
The sad story still in this country besieged by communism and oppression. But the messenger of hope has brought a new light to that nation, and I think as a fruit of this trip will be many people coming to seek baptism and to be educated in the faith.
And I would even dare say, this trip is not over. Let's see what he does with that token, because he was given a token of love and reconciliation from the Cuban family on the island to the Cubans,
yeah,
to the Cuban family living abroad.
The statue of Our Lady of Charity.
That was specifically given to him on behalf of the Cubans on the island to our brothers and sisters who are abroad. It hasn't ended yet, you know. I know
yes.
in the U.S. it will have its own dynamic. He's coming to Washington, the President, Congress, but his Cuban journey has not ended yet. He has that token that was given to him to deliver with a message of reconciliation.
To the people here, yeah. I want to share this email. This is Carol. She writes, I was moved to tears when the Pope blessed all pregnant women, not only in Cuba, but those watching around the world. And to touch on the life of the family, I found it ironic. The images we saw over the weekend of Fidel Castro surrounded by his family, and yet he prevented families coming together in the church in Cuba. I think the Pope has set into motion what we will see in America when the Holy Father addresses Congress and at the family conference, the importance of family and new life that comes from the unborn. Beautiful reflection of Jesus to the Cuban people. They have a very uplifted spirit and truth given Pope Francis's visit, as have I in the United States. Many like that. Many people were touched and moved by this. Look, the crowds really are thick as he approaches the airport, and he's only moments away. And from here, he will take off, and we will see him again around 3:30 this afternoon when he lands in the United States.
That eloquent interjection by the Pope of blessing the unborn children in the womb, it's a reminder that both reality and divinity come together. Reality of that's how the human race continues, and in God's plan, the Church welcomes that new life, and the blessing of God, even before they're born, is given to the child. This is an important message. Cuba has a very high rate of abortion, sad to say, and then of course the United States, the continuing drama in our country of Roe v. Wade and the refusal to give legal protection to unborn human beings. Really a national tragedy and crime that we hope and pray will end someday. Those kind of gestures remind us of the reality. Babies are real, and the Church loves them.
And also the elderly, because euthanasia is also,
that's right.
I mean, very much among us. Sometimes, as the Pope said, sometimes explicitly, as the Pope said in Cuba, sometimes explicitly, as in some countries in Europe, for example.
That's right,
and
the euthanasia
and oftentimes
programs.
implicitly. I mean, or tolerated, or blind eyes turned in the face of this reality, you know.
I hope that we see the media here in the United States follow him all the way to the end, as we're doing here, because I think that the danger might be that the media who have this mindset, that's exactly the one that the Holy Father is trying to, as he says, you flip the omelet, you move it in a different direction. I think they will tend to think that the meetings here in Washington and the meetings in New York are the key, and then, you know, we know what the Catholics think about the family and the future and the old and the young. If they don't follow him through all the way to the end, as we saw here in Cuba, they'll miss the heart of Bergoglio and the heart of what the Church has to say to the modern world. Politics, economics, environmentalism, they're always there, and they're always being debated in one way or another. But this deep authenticity, Father, when we were in Rome for the election of Francis, I said at one of our early meetings, scandalizing some of the persons sitting here, that maybe we don't need another teaching papacy. What we need is a pope who will help us to incarnate the wonderful teachings we've had from John Paul II.
Which is exactly what we got.
Which is exactly what we got.
Exactly what we got.
Yeah, we've had two popes that really defined the problems and the opportunities of the modern world. Now we've got to make them happen.
Exactly what we got. I mean, if you look at the speeches and the encyclicals of Francis, I mean, obviously the first one was composed at four hands, as he said. But even Laudato Si, profusely, Benedict XVI is profusely quoted. He has great esteem for Benedict XVI. I mean, all of these things that, all of these headlines, or the headlines that we see on television, I mean, and he has lamented on several occasions And even on the flight from Paraguay back to Rome, in his accustomed press conference, he told journalists, "I don't want to be a maestra ciruela," which is an expression in Argentina that we use. I wouldn't know how to translate it, but it's a nagging teacher, you know, a teacher that is unbearable. But he said, and he used that expression. He said to him, "I don't want to be a maestra ciruela, like a teacher that is nagging you, but you're not doing your job when you report about me."
I need to interrupt you 1 second, Father. Once again, Raul Castro has shown up. Castro has become a papal groupie at this point.
He's part of the member of the posse.
Yeah,
but
that's
you should
right.
invite him here.
He's a part of the papal posse now, an honorary Cuban member. Maybe he's opening the Cuban branch of the papal posse. Raul Castro took the Pope by the arm almost the moment he got off the Pope-mobile, and he's, you know, chewing his ear off as he leaves. We have some video, and guys, in the production studio in Birmingham, if you can cue that up, the reaction of Raul to the Pope's gospel today, particularly when he was talking about our revolution, a revolution of tenderness, of caring for others, of encounter, hearkening back to many of the themes that he considers, Francis does, central to his vision of the church, and a practical one that he seeks to impart to people. We will no doubt hear similar themes sounded when he arrives here in the United States. You will see in moments Raul Castro's reaction to that message of a counter-revolution, tenderness.
While we're waiting, what Father just said, I've got here in front of me a Washington Post editorial that appeared. Pope Francis appeases the Castros in repressive Cuba. They just didn't get it. They missed the main story.
I mean,
Totally.
Well, here's
And that's the, you're seeing images of the homily from earlier today and Fidel Castro's reaction to that.
Raul Castros.
Raul Castro, sorry.
He's right there in the middle.
He was sort of, he was not giving up much in his reaction to the homily, but it was no doubt a direct condemnation and a repositioning. Here's a real revolution.
Sure.
Get on board.
Sure.
Well, and the revolution of tenderness is a very good concept precisely because one of the aspects of communism is the coarseness of civic life. Everyone suspects everyone else. Those who are persecuted don't know if they can trust their neighbor. And of course, the government's attitude is either you are serve the government or you are going to be punished by the government. That's why so many fled. They didn't want to live their life like that. The Catholic Church message is when Cuban freedom comes, and it will come someday, the Catholic Church has to lead the path in reconciliation, in education, in showing to people the dignity, how you live with one another. This has been a big problem in the former Eastern Bloc countries, and Bob Royal knows this very well from his travels there, where the civic life seems to be absent because those civic virtues which are connatural with Christianity have been crushed.
Correct.
We have to get people into the spirit of Christ. When the Lord walked through the Holy Land, he was attracting people by his words and his actions, and he meant to do that because he wanted to convince people that the new kingdom includes everyone in a new vision. God's goodness, no fear, drawn in love. That's what we need to hope for Cuba.
And the Pope often speaks about the Good Samaritan, you know, and I think that what he's trying to also teach us is that the man who is in the ditch, and humanity is in the ditch, wounded by sin, if the Good Samaritan appears to him to be a hostile person, he's not going to allow the Good Samaritan to pour oil on his wounds and put him on his horse and take him to the inn. So that's the change in tone that the Pope is asking us Catholics to engage in. Because if we truly want to be the salt of the earth, if we want to be leaven for the transformation of culture, we have to engage. But in order to engage, we have to be able to enter into dialogue. And if we are seen as hostile, as a hostile force, then it's very difficult that we will be able to achieve anything. The broken humanity in the ditch will say to us Samaritan, they will only see the Samaritan part of it, not the good.
Yes.
The fact that we mean to the good. They will see us as something different, but not as something that has a message to bring that actually will take you out of the ditch, you know.
I have an email I'd like to share. This one says, today's the speech by the Holy Father, meeting with families, was very powerful. Thank you to Father Sid for his translations throughout, but particularly when he translated Pope Francis speaking off the cuff. He added a flavor and a knowledge that I appreciated very much, and that's from Mr. McKinley, and I think we all share.
He's my cousin.
That, oh, yeah, your cousin, McKinley. If you've got a cousin named McKinley, I've got an island to sell you. But I do really want to thank you so much for being here and for the really not only your understanding of the situation in Cuba, but the way you really jumped in and helped us translate so beautifully,
for me,
particularly as things were coming at us and you don't know when they're coming. So
for me, it is a great joy, Raymond, to be always with you. I thoroughly enjoyed the coverage of Pope Benedict's visit. It's etched in my mind. Beautiful memories I have of that, and so this has been a real pleasure for me.
I'm glad we could make more memories, as the Pope said. I have happy memories. Muchas gracias.
And now that I know that I will be replaced by Castro, who will join the papal court.
That's right. Raul Castro will be right in your seat. Actually, we will have, not Raul, but who knows? He is coming to the UN General Assembly. He might show up. But we are going to have throughout the week, and you will want to stay tuned for this, a series of special guests, commentators, a lot of surprises throughout the week planned for you, some incredible experts, some well-known personalities. You will not want to miss a moment of our coverage. It is going to be something extraordinary, not only because of the expertise of my papal posse and co-panelists here, but also because of the special visitors we'll have throughout the week. So that's going to add a little fun to the proceedings, and I'm glad we can do that. I'm not telling you who's coming. You have to wait. I may tweet it out in advance, so stay tuned on Twitter, but we'll have a lot of surprises throughout the week. And thank you again, Father Sid. It's been just a joy having you. We are waiting. You're seeing the external, the outside of the airport there in Santiago. The Pope will be taking his leave of this island nation any moment, and then he heads to the United States.
By the way, Raymond, if I am not wrong, the full name of Antonio Maceo, you see, Aeropuerto Internacional Antonio Maceo, Antonio Maceo International Airport, his full name was Antonio de la Caridad Maceo.
Because, well, he's a local from
Santiago. Yeah, he was one of the heroes of independence. Yeah, so Antonio, which goes to show how deep engraved in Cuban history and life is Our Lady of Charity.
When communists comes into a Catholic country, they immediately try to erase history, and they can't. And they try to rewrite history. They can't. In fact, this whole devotion to Our Lady of Charity is a sign of divine providence, protecting Cuba from that kind of erasure of memory. And as the Pope said, memory is so important, because once we understand why we are here, what led us to it, we know where to go in the future.
Or even when historical memory is preserved, it is twisted. For example, somebody asked us about Batista the other day. There was a man whose nickname was Manzanita Echevarria, who was a Catholic student leader who opposed Batista and was murdered at the time. And the Castro regime has exalted him as a leader in the fight against Batista, but there's never mention of the fact that he was a Catholic student union leader, you see, and so on and so forth. So the Catholic roots of Cuban identity, of Cuban nationhood, are there. They have suffered a lot, and that's what the Pope is trying to revitalize.
We have another email. This is from Blanca Merchand.
That's my aunt.
Well, Blanca Marchand, amazingly, and this you'll be, you will be astounded by this, because though it's your aunt, she's not thanking you at all. She says, my special thanks to Father Gerald Murray and Robert Royal for their profound understanding, not only of the history of Cuba, but for your knowledge and understanding of the Cuban soul, and those of us that live in Cuba, and for those of us that live outside of Cuba. My sincere thanks to all. Please tell my nephew to get a little more power on the edge of his nose. No, she didn't say that.
Yeah, she wants to keep me humble.
Raymond, let me interject here something. Two figures who have helped me understand Cuba very well. One is Armando Valladares, who is the author of Hope Beyond Hope. He was a Cuban political prisoner, one of the most eloquent witnesses of that horror, lives in the United States, was a U.S. ambassador to the United Nations Commission on Human Rights in Geneva. He continues to write. I had the privilege of meeting him a number of years ago in Miami. When you meet people who have suffered under communism brutally, and then they turn the new energy after freedom to try and defend their brothers and sisters, that's truly inspiring. The other figure was Monsignor Raul del Valle, who was my first pastor when I was ordained back in 1984. He was a Cuban exile priest who was the secretary of Cardinal Arteaga, who was the Archbishop of Havana at the time of the Cuban Revolution. He had to flee Cuba. He ended up in Venezuela, where he died. Monsignor del Valle ended up in New York. And he taught me so much. You know, he was so sad. And he would say to me, I could never imagine that Cuba would become communist. He couldn't believe it. He said, when we left in 1961, we thought we'd be back within months. He died in exile, but he died as a priest who was so beloved. He served the Hispanic community in New York. He taught me a lot. We're very blessed in the United States by the proximity of Cuba. And I look forward to the day when we can broadcast from Havana on EWTN.
This is the memory of the future.
Exactly. This is where we're headed to.
He got the living current right from the horse's mouth.
There you go. Well, I love that as I listened to Father Jerry tell us about the people who really informed you. If I know Robert Royal at all, I know a book promo is coming up. Did you write a book about Cuba? Anything at all that we should know about?
I'm not going to say. Check Amazon.
You did write a book. You did actually write a book about 1492.
1492 and all of that is the title.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah.
Because we were talking about this last time.
We were talking about this at
It does relate. We're not just doing mindless book pitches, though. Will Wilder could make an appearance in Havana in a forthcoming book. I'll tell you all about him later.
You're utterly shameless.
I'm just trying to get it all in.
No, actually, the very first book I wrote, and it came about almost by accident, happened because in 1992, which was the 500th anniversary of the voyages of Columbus, there was a tremendous reaction against the European and Christian age of exploration, which people were trying to portray as this terrible colonization and massacres of native peoples. And it has a point. I mean, there were some very terrible things.
Well, we're going to hear this later in the week when the Pope canonizes Junipero Serra.
Right. I mean, there were terrible things that happened, but you had these two utterly incompatible cultures that struck one another, and it was called the encounter at the time. But clearly, to me, what the goal was not to justly appreciate what had happened in the past. As I used to say, if you're going to blame Christopher Columbus for everything bad that's happened in the last 500 years, does he get credit for everything good that's happened in the past 500 years? Does the church get any credit for this outreach to the New World and its evangelization of peoples who had never heard about the redeeming love of Christ? And what it's clear that they wanted to do was to discredit the West, discredit the church, and so I wrote an article in First Things, a long book review of a book that was putting forth that view, and everyone said to me, you must write a book about that. And I said, I don't really know that much about it. No, you must.
Oh, sure you do.
So I did. It's not the first time I haven't written about the things that I don't know anything about.
Don't we all start out not knowing a whole lot? That's how you learn, by doing it, by doing the thing. We're going to take a very quick break. In moments, we will bring you the Pope's departure from the Santiago airport. He will leave Cuba, and he heads for Washington, D.C. And we'll bring you that arrival later in the day. We'll take a very quick break. Stay right there. Much more ahead when our EWTN live coverage of Pope Francis in Cuba and soon the United States continues. I'm Raymond Arroyo, back in the studio here in Washington, D.C. with the Papal Posse. We are going to take you live to Santiago, Cuba. President Raul Castro on the tarmac with Pope Francis as the Pope prepares to leave this island nation and head for the United States.
The national anthem of Cuba.
And in a moment, we'll hear the national anthem of the Holy See. And the Pope is again carrying his own bag, which is something we haven't seen. Though there are some reports here and there that that's not quite as organic as we might have been led to believe.
It's another papal gesture, I think, to show exactly that he is his own man and he's going to carry on as he did when he was Archbishop of Buenos Aires, which he's perfectly entitled to do.
And also he received a token from Cubans on the island for Cubans in the U.S.
And you think that's what's in the bag?
Maybe. It looks stuffed.
Vatican hymn.
You know, when we talk about the Holy Father as a head of state, we tend to forget that the Holy See is a state, indeed, in its own right, since ancient times in the Congress of Vienna 1815, but at the same time that it's unlike any other state in that the Holy See does not have national interests like the US has, not even like Switzerland has, because the interest of the Holy See is to advance the kingdom of God.
Yes.
Not temporal interests. So the Holy Father is a head of state in its own right, but at the same time, he's unlike the President of the United States or the President of Switzerland in that his mission is universal and his interests are not geopolitical or economic or this worldly, but to lead all men to Christ.
Yeah, the city-state, Vatican city-state, is simply a legal vehicle, a sovereign entity to allow the true sovereign entity, the Holy See, to accomplish its mission, to protect the independence of the Pope and to allow him to, as it were, not be subject to any
so that he
foreign
will be
power.
sovereign.
Exactly.
Sovereign. It's a true state, and it is a true state.
Yes, but the Holy See internationally presents itself. We don't have ambassadors to the Vatican city-state; they're ambassadors to the Holy See. So
Exactly. Once again, the man will go in face to the Pope and shout at him. We've seen this before, about 3 years ago. Just as we saw the elevator. He must have flown in from Havana because it's the same man, the same name.
This is EWTN live coverage of the farewell ceremony in Cuba as Pope Francis prepares to board the jet that will take him to Washington, D.C. and begin the second leg of this historic journey to this hemisphere, to the Americas. But he just tweeted me. The Holy Father may have Cuban cigars in that bag for Cardinal Dolan.
that would be a welcome gift.
That would be.
That's Cardinal Parolin, the Cardinal Secretary of State.
And again, this is part of the protocol which we saw during the welcome. The entire papal entourage, members of the papal household, masters of ceremony, heads of dicasteries, all bid the leader of a particular country that the Pope was visiting hello and goodbye. And then following this, the Cuban officials will offer their thanks as the Pope leaves this island nation.
Those are members of the Cuban government. They all seem to be sporting a guayabera.
Yeah, the uniform of the day is the guayabera. Probably a good idea how hot, seemed to be very hot there today. Yeah, that lady bowed to him, and then
he returned the
he
bow.
gave a sign of respect.
For some reason, that lady doesn't shake hands. So no speeches.
I had imagined that there would be some speech, but perhaps not.
Going to let him go?
It looks like Raul's about to get on the plane.
Yeah, well, he
Because
probably
you,
doesn't have as many publicity
because of
shots when
That's
the Pope
right.
is,
You see,
the
I
Pope
shouldn't
is not there.
have. We shouldn't have. Father Sid did offer him a place on the panel. Maybe he's just jumping a ride here. And there he goes, getting on the Alitalia jet, headed for the United States. The next time you see Pope Francis, he'll be on American soil. So his final words to the Cuban people were delivered at that meeting with families,
Yeah.
which was an important and telling
No, I
moment.
think we have to think of that as the culmination. He said in those remarks that it was the cherry on the cake, you know, and I think he meant that. He loves to use those common
Sure.
images, and I think he meant for him, this is the culmination. Yeah?
Cherry on the top of the cake.
Yeah, I guess in the U.S. you would say the icing on the cake, right?
Yes, that's right.
The icing on the cake.
or the cherry at the top of the sundae.
That's right. That's true.
Well, Raul Castro looks awfully alone now, with only a few bishops to keep him company. It was a very cordial visit. I mean, all in all, I mean, not that the other ones haven't been for Pope Benedict and John Paul, but clearly things are loosening. One can feel a gradual...
Let's see how things develop from here, because it's quite clear communists don't invite popes to their island unless they think they're going to benefit from it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if by God's grace this man ever were to have a conversion, that would be a great fruit. But let's hope and pray that after this trip, he'll realize how deep the Catholic faith still is in Cuba, and that it is in his interest to give it more freedom so that people can live dignified lives. This whole question of communism, you know, we're promoting the dignity of men. They promote the slavery of men. They have to set men free now, and that's what the Catholic Church offers: true freedom under God's law.
Yeah. No, this is what we're seeing here is really a message of hope. He said when he started, "I come as a missionary of mercy," and we saw him extend that mercy to families, to the Castros, to the beleaguered people on this island, and even to those who are estranged from their homeland, who can't return.
Yes, how beautiful the Pope invoking so frequently during the trip that great populace, that great exile community, who, as we've said earlier, you know, they have a great love for their country, and they have such fond memories, those who were born there, and the next generation still so much attached. Father Sid, you work in Miami.
Sure.
How do you think this is going to play out there?
Well, I hope, I mean, it is obvious, and our Archbishop Wensky has repeatedly stated that the Church in Cuba is trying to mediate a soft landing for Cuba. And now, when you have been 50 years away from your country, and you're facing death with the impossibility of returning to your beloved country, then it's difficult. When, I mean, it's easy for us to talk about reconciliation. My brother was not shot to death.
Right.
My sister was not in prison, incarcerated for 18 years and tortured, you know. So, but at the same time, so we cannot deny or downplay the suffering. But at the same time, there's one also has to bear in mind that there is a greater good that is at stake, and that's the good of the Cuban family. So it's a very difficult situation. I think that the danger, in my estimation, and this is my personal opinion now, and as Plato said, opinion is the lowest form of knowledge. You know? My personal opinion is that the danger is that in their good faith, the bishops may end up enabling the Chinese model in Cuba, where you have a move towards the free market, but not really any reform. The same cabal runs the country, the same totalitarian regime is in place, but there's cosmetic change and a free market economy. But the people are still oppressed, suffering. Christians are still persecuted, harassed, jailed because of their faith. So I think that's the danger. But I mean, I'm sure that they know that danger, and they're just willing to take the risk, you know, because of what's at stake. I mean, nobody wants a bloodbath in Cuba.
No, but we saw right at the beginning. I mean, if there was any conflictual element in this visit, which was largely a very warm, personal encounter, as Holy Father says, we saw Raul repeating that same old Marxist boilerplate about how human rights are respected here, and we've suffered so much from aggressions from, you know, it's the old mouthwash, as Albert Camus once said. You know, they repeat these things over and over again. They're always perfect. I mean, in their understanding, it's not a matter of being a family that has imperfect elements. They're always perfect. They're actually pursuing the right course for humanity. And it's hard to know how that ideology disappears. You're right, you can have openings on economics. They clearly want to have some interchange now with the United States. But how far they're willing to change, how far even the next generation would be willing to change after people who are in power depend on that ideology to stay prominent in the society. That's going to be a difficult negotiation.
And also, I mean, 50 years of materialistic atheism leave an imprint also in
Yes.
I mean, they have an anthropological effect.
Sure.
you know?
Well, that's actually going to be a big part of the mission of the church. When it's,
corruption is a big problem in
Sure.
Cuba today, and there
Sure.
are many people that have grown used to a certain way of doing things that, are comfortable that way. Just as on this side of the Florida Straits, there are also people who are benefiting with the statu quo, and so.
Well,
So
I
we'll
thank
see.
you all for being with us, particularly
Raymond,
you, Father Sid.
great
This is
pleasure.
the end of your ride on the
Thank you.
USS Posse panel, or Papal panel, or what are we? The
Papal
Papal
Posse.
Posse. It's been a long day and many
been shown
long
the red
nights,
carpet, by the way.
but I thank you so much. We look forward to having Raul in
Thank
your
you.
chair. Thank you for keeping it warm for him. Robert Royal, Father Jerry, we will be back momentarily. It won't be all that long. Join us later today. We're thinking it'll be around 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time because the Pope is leaving a little earlier than expected. He will arrive in the United States. We will bring you that arrival live as it happens. Don't miss a moment of this. He'll be touching down at the Joint Base Andrews near Washington. Check EWTN.com for the schedule in your area. Our comprehensive coverage of Pope Francis's journey continues on our EWTN Facebook page. And for the latest updates, you can follow me on Twitter at Raymond Arroyo. I want to extend a very special thank you to Father Sid and to all of you who've been watching and really enriching these days for us, and to the entire staff and crew. Before we go, I want you to stay tuned for EWTN News coverage of the World Meeting of Families from Philadelphia with Doug Keck and Johnette Bankovic. We'll see you soon.